Now, like I said, it's my great pleasure to introduce the next speaker. As usual, people at the Guild write my opening introductions, but I've thrown that away because I've just recently met the next speaker, Senator Nick Xenophon, and he's by far the most passionate politician I've ever met, and I can assure you I've met a lot of politicians. So without further ado, Senator Nick Xenophon.
Thanks, George, and thanks for inviting me to speak to you today. It's a bit of an echo, isn't it? Yeah, that's right. It's like a double voice. People are usually used to politicians speaking with two faces rather than two voices. So at events like these, I normally like to start off with a few jokes or personal stories just to break the ice. But I don't have time, and neither do you, for me to beat around the bush. I want to tell you some uncomfortable truths, but like a particularly bitter medicine, I believe the end results will be worth it. When I was first thinking about what to say today, I was reminded of that famous speech from the 1976 film Network. In it, news anchor Howard Beale, played by Australian actor Peter Finch, appeals to his viewers to act, to do something to change the world. He says, "All I know is that first you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being, God damn it, my life has value. So I want you to get up now. I want you to all get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window. Open it and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell and I'm not going to take this anymore. I want you to get up right now, sit up, go to your windows, open them and stick your head and yell, I'm mad as hell, I'm not going to take this anymore. Things have got to change, but first you've got to get mad." Well, your industry is in a crisis that is not of your own making. Australia's health system is under incredible strain, and successive governments have seen pharmacists as an easy, soft target for savings they should be making elsewhere. For too long, you've been an easy target for successive governments because it's almost as though politicians can take advantage of your sense of community obligation and service. Even worse, this government seems to have looked at the current budget crisis like it's grade 6 maths. We're spending too much, therefore we will cut the areas with the most spending and that will solve our problem. But it doesn't. When you cut healthcare, when you cut social services, when you cut support programs blindly without proper consideration, you cut the very foundation of our society. You know only too well that dollar figures don't show the real story. When you recommend a cough syrup to a worried mother or take time to chat to a pensioner and make sure they're okay, that's not represented in the dollar values of the community pharmacy agreement. A few minutes ago, I had the pleasure of meeting Hannah Mann. Where are you, Hannah? Is she anywhere here? She had better things to do. She's over there. Oh, there you are. Sorry, Hannah. Spoke to Hannah. Congratulations of winning Pharmacy of the Year up at Broome, and she made the point that she runs pharmacies in Broome, in Derby, and Fitzroy Crossing, and she has to deal with Indigenous communities there, where what she does, what she dispenses and the advice she gives is absolutely critical. Hannah made the point, and I hope she doesn't mind me saying it, that if it all goes badly, what do you tell the coroner? And that's what is at stake here if you cut away that level of service. But successive governments haven't been able to understand anything that's not represented as a budget bottom line. They have fallen victim to short-term thinking and the endless threat of focus groups and polls. They've brushed away promises, with your sector particularly, as casually as you'd swat a fly. You're the ones who have to remind them of what is at stake. The complete lack of understanding from governments has been demonstrated only too well in the discussion about price disclosure. In good faith, you made agreements with the previous government and previous governments, in fact, about how this would work and on what schedule it would occur. So you had time to compensate and adjust your business practices. But governments seeking only a quick fix for revenue throughout this timeline and went ahead at full speed. I was, and I am, shocked that no one on either side of politics seems to understand the implications of doing this. A few weeks ago, I sat in the Senate and listened as Labor Senator Sue Lyons from Western Australia questioned the government as to why Commonwealth cleaners had their wages reduced by up to $1 an hour. Now, I'm not criticising Senator Lyons. On the contrary, I think it's a very valid issue. But I know her interest, in part, comes from the fact that she was formerly an official of United Voice, the union, and so naturally has a history in the area of workplace relations. But each time price disclosure is accelerated, the debate has been pretty one-sided. No one in either of major parties has stood up and banged on their desk and shouted across the chamber to demand to know why this is happening and what the implications will be. I'm actually embarrassed that last year, in March of last year, I think it was about March the 14th, it was about a year ago today, that there was a debate about the accelerated price disclosure, the simplified price disclosure being sped up. I wanted to know what the impact this would have on pharmacies. I objected to it. Nobody else spoke against it. No one else in the 76-member chamber spoke against it. It was rammed through with the government breaking its promise, with the compliant help of the opposition. Why? Because the real impact of what's been happening to your sector and everything else that successive governments have done to pharmacies isn't understood by everyday voters. But I think enough is enough. Yours is one of the most trusted professions in Australia. On the widely surveyed Reader's Digest Index, I think you're in the top 3 of the top 100 most trusted professions. Unfortunately, my profession is in the bottom 3. So how do you think that the hundreds, if not thousands, of people you see each week would feel if they really understood what the government was doing to you? And ultimately to them. I understand the difficulties you face. You are, in a sense, beholden to the government, and I acknowledge the need to find a balance between advocacy and not wanting to rock the boat. Well, I hate to say it, but while you've been trying not to rock the boat, successive governments have gone and drilled great big holes in the bottom of your boat. The time for politeness, for understanding and restrained debate has passed. It's time to get angry, because what successive governments have been doing just doesn't affect you and your business. It affects people's health. We know that preventative health is one of the best ways to lead to better outcomes for individuals and society. Pharmacists play a huge role in that by filling the gap between no care and going to the GP or hospital. But this government doesn't seem to understand the benefits of preventative health. The former government said that it did, but they haven't when it comes to pharmacists who are at the front line. Now, just look at the government's mangled attempts to establish a GP co-payment. And when you consider that Medicare cost taxpayers $19 billion a year compared to the $55 billion of taxpayers' money that goes to our hospitals, I don't quite get the reform priority. While the government has scrapped the co-payment after a vigorous lobbying campaign by the medical profession, it's telling that the cuts you've already faced as a proportion of your income through the simplified price disclosure and its acceleration are much more savage than anything faced by the doctors. The trouble with health policy and the hundreds of billions of dollars it consumes is that it's too often looked at in individual silos. This means that instead of looking at the savings to Medicare when people go to see their pharmacist for advice, governments only see the cost to the PBS of having pharmacists in the first place. There's a real opportunity for your profession to step out of its silo and advocate for health reform elsewhere. There are examples of real game-changing innovation overseas. For instance, the hospital system in Sweden has been reformed with greater levels of transparency, which leads to better outcomes, saving billions in the process. For example, there is St. Göran's Hospital, which provides health care to the public with a nominal charge, like all of Sweden's hospitals, but it's run by a private company. And it doesn't matter whether it's private or public, it's the way that it's run that's important. It focuses on improving the quality of care and the flow through of patients by doing things like releasing patients throughout the day instead of all at once so they have easier access to transport. Reductions in the time of stay means fewer diseases are transmitted in hospital, but it also means that Sweden needs fewer hospitals to care for its population. And all of the data relating to each hospital, from length of stay, number of patients per room, waiting times and finances, as well as the usual success rate for operations, are available to the public instantly. This provides a significant incentive for improvement. No one wants to be seen as slipping down the tables. The point of this is that there can be significant savings in other parts of the health system without compromising patient outcomes, and indeed while improving them. Just recently I spoke to Mark Doran, who runs the Calvary Health Group, one of the biggest private hospital providers in the country, not for profit. He tells me that billions of dollars can be saved with a new approach to palliative care. Instead of people dying in intensive care, in high dependency units, they can get a much better quality of life outcome. Instead, the bean counters pick on pharmacies because it gives a superficial sugar hit to the budget bottom line. The process in Australia so far has been a bit like boiling a frog. The temperature has been rising so slowly that it's difficult to recognise how much things have changed. And no other area of the healthcare system has taken as much of a hit as pharmacies. I've spoken to many of you who tell me first and second-hand stories of pharmacies on the brink, whose goodwill value has been destroyed because of the stroke of a government pen. So-called simplified price disclosure has been the final straw. I have no doubt that if this keeps going, many of you will wonder why you're in this profession in 5 years' time, if not now, that there will be hundreds of communities around the nation, particularly country towns, without a pharmacy. The social cost of this will be incalculable, and in dollar terms there will be no doubt more spent on otherwise avoidable trips to the doctor and to hospitals. But if you want this to stop, you have to turn the heat back on the government, of whatever political persuasion. I've asked before how the people who come into your pharmacies, who trust you and rely on your care, would feel if they knew what was happening to your pharmacy. There are 5,450 small business pharmacies in Australia. You employ over 60,000 staff, and each year Australians visit you 300 million times. These people and their loyalty and trust are your biggest resource. One issue that hits home more than almost any other is the rise of Coles and Woolworths and the lack of competition in the grocery market. The idea that the same thing might happen with pharmacies will lead to community outrage. You need to tap into the resource and get your customers fighting for you. Every pharmacy should be a campaign office and every pharmacist an advocate for their profession. I believe your industry is at a tipping point. In his book, The Sweet Spot, How Australia Made Its Own Luck and Could Now Throw It All Away, Australian journalist Peter Harcher, one of Australia's great writers, writes about the existential crisis facing the West, the demographic time bomb that will leave fewer people in work to pay for the services needed by more and more people who have retired. We need to make sure we're prepared to deal with this, and a vital part of that is having a strong healthcare system. You're obviously not the problem, but you can certainly be part of the solution. I've seen what a powerful lobby can achieve. A few years ago, I saw the poker machine lobby dismantle the then Labor government's proposed gambling reforms that were supported by the vast majority of voters. So if they can manage to throw out something so widely supported, imagine what you could do with 90% of your customers having a high level of satisfaction for your services. You have the potential to make politicians so nervous they'll be buying up your entire stocks of antacid, who knows, maybe even gastrostop. The changes this, and maybe a bit of Stemetal as well, the changes this and the previous government have made to accelerated price disclosure, to simplify price disclosure, have the potential to tear your service to the community apart. That's why the 6th Community Pharmacy Agreement is so critical. Politicians of all persuasions need to know that you'll no longer be a convenient scapegoat for savings that are the worst form of false economy. So with Howard Beale, I say you've got to get angry. Throw open your doors and shout to the world, tell anyone and everyone what's happening to you, because this may be your very last chance to stop a precious part of the very fabric of our community from being torn apart. Thank you. Don't think it worked? That's all right.
We were going to play the chorus to a song that was very apt for Nick, but I think we failed. Thank you very much, Nick. You motivate us and you do give us strength in terms of the fight that we have ahead of us. As George said, he speaks to many politicians, but in terms of politicians who say it straight and say it as it is, I think you're pretty much one of a kind. You did say some things which I think we need to take very much on board. You told us we need to get angry. We need to get as mad as hell. You said we need to start to rock the boat to say enough is enough.
Before it sinks.
And the fact of the matter is that we are in the fight of our life and we do need to stand up for what is right. And I'm very confident that with support of people like you and your guidance, and more than anything the support, as you said, of the patients who come into our pharmacies every day, and 90% of those patients, of those 300 million visits, come out of those pharmacies totally satisfied with the service they receive. If we can motivate those patients and get them behind us, I think there's no way that we can be beaten. So thank you for your advice. Please be assured we will take it on board, and you're always very welcome to come here to APP. Please thank Senator Nick Xenophon.